Before we begin, thank you very much to Waspinator1998 for joining the Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. Thank you guys so much for your contributions there. It genuinely does keep the channel going and allow me to continue doing this at the rate I am doing it. So if you've been enjoying the channel, consider $1 or $2 just to help keep it going and keep everything moving along, and it is very appreciated. When I started this content push back in September, one of the first videos I did, and one of the first ones that kind of took off, was a list of obscure Beast Wars facts. And now, obviously, lately I've been in something of a Beast Wars mood, so I figured it's time to go to that well again. Admittedly, when I look over this particular list, there's a lot here that are probably common knowledge to those who have been in the fandom long enough, and then there are some that I think are genuinely quite obscure and very rare to hear about. Hopefully everyone gets something new out of this video, and even if you don't, this is still, 25-year-old information. It's worth repeating so it just stays out there in the consciousness. So without further ado, here are 10 more obscure Beast Wars facts. And we're going to start with one that I think is quite common, and that is looking at the final episode, where the final battle was supposed to be far more epic than they originally intended. So the idea behind it was they wanted a G1 heavy episode to round off the series, and that was going to involve a air battle between the Nemesis and a fully functioning flying Ark. We would have actually seen the Ark fly once more. The plan even included seeing the Conehead Seekers, Thrust, Ramjet, and Dirge, reactivating and ramming into the Nemesis. Why they were ramming into their own ship, I have no idea. It was a weird tongue-in-cheek way of explaining why those 3 Seekers were missing for Season 1 and only showed up later. They crashed with the Nemesis. Simply, something along that nature. Like a lot of things that they wanted to do in Beast Wars, and hey, it's not even the last time you'll hear about it on this list, they stopped this because of budgetary reasons. Running thin on cash toward the end of the series, they didn't get to make it the big epic battle that they wanted it to be. What we got, I think, was still pretty good, but man, we just get to dream about what it could have been. Speaking of the final battle, we have to talk about Tigerhawk now, because he was in a really weird position at this point in the show. At the time of his inception, when Hasbro wanted him to be put into the series, they weren't actually sure the series was going to end. There was still a possibility of Beast Wars continuing for a 4th year and a 4th season. So Hasbro intentionally asked for the character to be put in, but when it was decided that Beast Wars would be coming to an end and they weren't sure if they were actually going to be able to release the toy, they also asked them to kill the character off quickly, and that's what got written in. Tigerhawk survived an entire 3 episodes. And then they decided to release the toy anyway. And at this point, it's too late. The animation's done, the plot is written, Tigerhawk is going to get killed off. So, unfortunately, there were so many miscommunications with what to do with the character, no one really knew exactly what was going to happen, and by the time they figured it out, way too late. As it is, the toy never even saw release until well after the series was over. So this was all around a very weird situation for a toy to go through. The toy itself has plenty of other oddities, from an aborted, multi-arm gimmick to a aborted vehicle mode and a spark pilot that never occurred. All that can be covered later. For now, Tigerhawk is just a weird situation. Not the weirdest situation, though, because we almost had a completely different style of Megatron available in the show. Believe it or not, when they designed the Inferno toy at Hasbro, the original intention, according to them, was to cast it as a brand new Megatron. Imagine that. Megatron as a gigantic fire ant. That was literally in the plan. At the time, the writers in the show had the solution of, well, we'll just kill off Megatron in the show and let him be reborn in this new body. Obviously, didn't happen, and thank Primus it didn't. Like you imagine the toy a Megatron toy shelf warming because no kid wanted to buy a gigantic ant toy. There is a tongue-in-cheek reference to it in Season 2, where a mid-air collision between Inferno and Megatron leads to them having swapped heads, which is a funny little nod to an obscure piece of Transformers knowledge. But it's still hard to wrap your head around. Megatron is an ant. I did a whole video about all the weird things Megatron turned into. An ant probably would have topped the list. As long as we're talking about Inferno, let's talk about that beast mode a little bit, because the weirdness to that beast mode is the fact that it's not a male mold. It's not a male design. He is based on a drone ant, and every drone ant is female. The male ants of the colony have wings, which are obviously absent on Inferno. Thus, it's a female body that he transforms into when he goes into beast mode. And he's not alone. Waspinator is similarly based on a drone bee, which again is always female. So you have two characters who have female alt modes, and that's mostly just because they're the more familiar designs, the more known versions of those insects. So that's just a recognition thing. It's not like a weird gender confusion. It's just kids know a normal ant more than a winged ant. That kind of thing. Incidentally, he's not the only two. Tigatron also shares this distinction, though not because of any physical appearance that he has in beast mode. Rather, the tiger that he scanned, that we saw, Snowstalker, that we would come to know her as, is a female character, a female tiger. Thus, his alt mode is also female. Interesting little gender swaps going on in Beast Wars every time they transform, even if that's not intentional. One character in particular did have some confusing gender swaps, and that goes for Hasbro and Takara. The original toy of Airazor was picked by the animation studio Mainframe to be another female character because they needed to have more females in the cast. At this stage, Hasbro had intended for the toy to be male, but it was so early in the process that they got to change the pronouns on the packaging and changed Airazor into a female character. Of course, later on, Airazor would get a completely female mold in Transmetals, the very first one intentionally designed to be female in all of Transformers. In Japan, however, Airazor was always a male character, patterned as a student of Tigatron rather than a love interest. At least that's how they had to play it until they got very overt with the romance between Tigatron and Airazor. When that occurred, they had to abruptly change it into a romance in Japan, incidentally creating the first gay couple in Transformers fiction. And then Japan had to retcon it again because Metals came out, and now Airazor in toy and in the manga going for Beast Wars Metals was now a female character again. It's a bizarre situation all the way around, no matter what coast you were on. So just take whichever version of Airazor you grew up with and enjoy it. There is nothing wrong with it. It's just a bizarre bit of gender confusion that only toys in Japan can provide. We're going to stick to Airazor for a bit here and talk about 2 episodes that never made it to air. We talked about Dark Glass before, which is the most famous unproduced episode, but there are 2 more that were in the scripting phase and never made it to actual production. One was called Greater Ape, where Optimus Primal would sustain an injury that stuck him in beast mode and would actually make him think he was a real gorilla. to the point where he joined a colony of gorillas, even having a girlfriend amongst the gorillas. Bizarre concept for an episode, isn't it? The resolution would have been like a little weird, bittersweet, where they kind of like, where the gorillas kind of find out what he is and just kind of reject him at that point, because of course they would. It's a bizarre episode concept. Call of the Wild kind of revisits that a little bit. So they did kind of get that plot in there somewhere. The reason I got canceled is because it would require so many new models to be created, because I guess they had to make sure all of the gorillas looked different from each other. But again, like a lot of things in Beast Wars, budgetary reasons, it got cut. Another episode, and excuse my language here, but this is literally what the episode was called, Bitch Wars. I'm not even kidding. Now, obviously, that would have been the final production name that you saw at the title card, but the episode would have revolved around Black Arachnia and Airazor basically getting sick of both of their factions and joining up together for a temporary third faction. Now, this is basically a girls' night out episode. There's plenty of cartoons that have done things like that to put a focus on their female cast, but they didn't go through with it because they had no idea where it was going, and honestly, there's no way you can actually set that up. The two are polar opposites of each other. So that one was more concept than anything, never made it past that, and definitely for the best. While we never really got to see Airazor and Black Arachnia interact much in the show, probably for the best not to make that script. There's another removal from the show that we have to talk about, another character that didn't quite make the cut. We mentioned in previous episode of this that Wolfang, the Maximal Wolf from the toy line, was originally slated to join the cast, only to be replaced by Tigatron for, say it with me now, budgetary reasons. Well, the Predacons had something similar. They were going to be joined by Insecticon, the first-year basic class figure, who would have been part of the initial cast. This again, a budgetary cancellation, but there are still minor remnants of Insecticon still in the series. In particular, the earlier episodes like Power Surge, where Waspinator is suddenly more articulate than he normally would be, even more articulate than he was previously in the episode. This is left over from altering and reshuffling the script so Insecticon's lines got fed to other characters. This is also a likely explanation for why Scorponok appeared so bonehead stupid in some episodes and smart enough to create viral agents in other episodes. Bizarre little consequences of taking out a character at the last minute, though really it's only the first, maybe just a handful of episodes where you can still kind of read between the lines and see where Insecticon still slightly exists. We'll go back to the Maximals for another canceled concept, and this one revolves around Chidor. He is the young upstart character, and the original concept for him would be to demonstrate that very literally. The intention behind Chidor, when Mainframe first concepted his character, was to actually have him visibly age during the proceedings of the show, going from a wide-eyed, round-faced character to something much closer to how the toy looked. They were going to go with this growing up mechanic as he matured as a character, and that also came down to what was called a hero's heart, a glowing heart that would literally appear every time he completed a brave or heroic act. I think this even bled into the Transmetal design, where you can actually flip up his chest and see an actual sculpted heart on him. This didn't get very far, and thankfully it didn't, because it's such a hokey concept. It's very cheesy. But also, Transformers don't age that quickly. They can live for millions of years completely unchanged. So the idea of seeing one grow up in the process of Beast Wars, which ultimately is not that long, in canon as far as how long they're stuck there, it really wouldn't have made sense ultimately. So I'm glad they didn't go that route, and Chidor was just allowed to be his own thing. Yeah, let's leave the cheesy parts out. Chidor was not the only character with an abandoned concept, though. Rat Trap was originally conceived as an incredibly different character than what he turned out to be. The intention of the character was to be completely malformed, asymmetrical in design with oddly proportioned parts, exposed wiring, organic innards that were visible, even a very obvious heating coil that looked like a life support system that he always had to be attached to. The concept all originated from the fact that the toy itself had a visible brain sculpted into the top of the head. So essentially, they wanted to make it so that his entire transformation and scanning glitched out, and he ended up in this malformed state so he could learn to overcome his difficulties and differences to be a hero himself. Commendable to try and get that message in, but to base such a dramatically different and weird character based on just one detail on the original toy sculpting, little bit too far. Also, this isn't just like a financial thing, why this got cut. It also got cut because, well, it would have been vastly different from the actual toy on the shelf. Too different at that point. So, yeah, thankfully, that got cut. It would not be the last time that they played with the idea of Rat Trap dealing with a disability, but it would be another writing team that handled that. Thankfully, we got the wisecracking, sarcastic Rat Trap we all know and love, and not whatever would have essentially been a prototype Transmutate. But on that note, we have to end with a bit of Transmutate and the literal episode, Transmutate, because this episode was a victim of a practical joke that fooled a lot more people than it originally intended. As it turns out, the original script for this episode included an entirely different scene that never made it to animation, where Chidor and Rat Trap are trying to get a laugh out of Transmutate, and getting an extremely awkward one out of her. The scene gets weirder and weirder. There's a lot of really bizarre lines in it. Like the characters are kind of acting off. And then the finale of the scene, I'm not going to describe it the way the script describes it, but it ends in a sex scene. I'm not making that up. I'm not making that up. This is available on the archive of Alt Toys Transformers, the old news group. The wiki article for Transmutate's episode on TF Wiki has a link to it. You can go look it up yourself. I'm not linking it here, and I'm not showing the excerpt. But there's literally a sex scene in it, and it ends with Chidor saying he wants a turn. It was written in as a joke toward the editors. Unfortunately, the joke got a lot worse when the script actually managed to leak onto the news group, and it did so ahead of the release of the episode, which led a lot of people wondering exactly what this episode was and if this really was it made it very suspicious whether or not it was a real episode. Imagine being on that news group and reading the script to this and hitting that part and going, "Oh my god, this has to be fake." And then the episode plays and everything in the first part of the script is completely accurate and you're just watching it going, "Oh no, oh no, 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 no." Oh, the days of the early internet when that's how easily people got tricked. But that was not a trick meant for them. It just happened to accidentally go to them too. But yeah, it's a bizarre fact, and it's one I can't really top today. So we're going to end it off there. How many did you know? Were there any I missed? Is there any obscure Beast Wars fact to even be stated anymore? I'm sure delving through interviews, there probably is a few there that I haven't mentioned yet. But for now, that is my list. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned. The next list, who knows? Might be a while, might be tomorrow. That's the fun of it. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.